Hey everybody, Ray here. Today we're going to build what I think is going to be a really simple ski rack to hold skis or to hang skis up in your garage. If you have an interest in that, stick around and I'll show you how to do it. And don't forget, if you like this video, hit that like button for me, would you? I'd really appreciate it. Now what I'll use to make this ski rack is I'll be using my driver to push in some screws through the back of the board and into the dowels that will stick out in the front. I've got some number 6 2-inch screws that I'll be using, some wood glue. I've got my drill set up on the stabilizer here. This was given to me by a friend of mine named Bill. Thanks, Bill. I use this all the time now. And I've got a 3/4 inch Forstner bit on here. You don't have to have a Forstner bit. You could use a paddle bit. That's just fine. But I wanted it to go in there as straight as possible. And I've got this set so it will only penetrate through the 1x 3/8 of an inch. And then I also have some hooks. You'll see how I use these later. For the lumber parts, I bought a 3/4 inch dowel that's 6 feet long, and I bought 2 1x12s that are 6 feet long. I plan to make the shelf 6 feet wide, so I don't even have to do any cutting on those. Now the first thing I will do is measure across my board this way, and what I'm going to do is put a set of skis every foot. That's where the center line will be when I hang the skis up there. So I'll mark this at every 12 inches across the board here so I can figure out where I need to drill my holes. All right, so I measured across this way with my 12-inch increments, and that's what gave me this line right here. The other thing I have to take into account was there will be a shelf on the top of this which will be over the tips of the skis. The tips of the skis will be pointed up this way, so I have to allow enough room between the pegs that they will hang on and still be able to fit underneath the shelf. So I just measured down 8 inches from the top of the board, and that's how I got my crosshairs to know exactly where the center will be between the skis when I hang them up. The top shelf will accommodate ski boots, helmets, whatever else they might want to put up there. I want 1 inch between my 2 pegs, which are 3/4 inches across. That's where I'm going to hang my skis. So once I knew where that center point was, remember that's every 12 inches, then I could measure a 1/2 inch on each side of that center line, and that would give me my inch where I want to hang my skis. In order to center my dowels, they were 3/4 inches wide, so I had to come over 3/8 of an inch to find the center of the dowel. So that's an additional 3/8 inch. That's where I will drill my 3/4 inch holes. Now remember, I've set up a stop, so this will only go in 3/8 inch. I don't want it to go all the way through the board. I want each one of my pegs to come out 6 inches from the backboard. So what I've done is I've set up a stop block here for 6 3/8 inches, because remember, I drilled a hole into that board 3/8 of an inch deep. So I'm going to just cut all my pegs now exactly the same length because I've used this stop block. Now because I didn't drill all the way through here, if you look right in the center here, you might be able to see just a little starter hole where the Forstner bit was just beginning to penetrate. I'm going to use that as a center hole, and I'm going to drill through all the way through with a hole large enough just to get the screw through, because I want to screw in from the back here to additionally hold that peg to this board other than just having glue. Now I set my board up on a couple of blocks here, so when I go through the board, I won't be going into my workbench. I've done that enough. Now we'll take our dowels, put a little glue around the bottom, It's not going to take a lot because it's a pretty tight fit in there already. We'll just slide them into our hole. After letting the glue dry for a couple of hours, what I'm doing is coming back in here now and putting the screws in from the back into the pegs in the front. Now remember, I said that this was going to have a top on it, and it's going to be made out of the same 1x12 material, which will just sit like this on the back. So to hold that on there, I will do two things. First, I will drill through and I will insert about every foot a screw going through the top into the back. To have additional support, I've cut some 45s here, and this is just out of some half-inch plywood, and it's about, I would say, 5x6 or something like that, and that will fit under like this, and I'll have 4 of them just to give it a little extra support so this won't want to tilt that way on me. I applied a bead of glue between the two boards, and now I'm just putting in some screws to hold the top to the back, and then I'll also put those 45s in there. I'm using 2-inch number 6 screws. And that with the glue is going to do a great job. Now my board here is just a little warped, which is not unusual for a 1x12. But in order to get this to sit nice and square in there, this little 45-inch brace, I've put a clamp on here, and I'll just pull that clamp till I get that to be a nice 45 in there. And that might be a little bit too much. Right about like that. And then I'm going to glue that and pin nail it in. If you don't have a pin nailer, you can also just attach these with screws. I'm using a pin nailer because the little brace that I made is only a 1/2 inch thick. It's out of 1/2 inch plywood. If you do decide to use screws, I would make that little brace out of something that's at least 3/4 of an inch thick. So I put 4 of these 45-degree supports on, 1 on each side and 2 in the middle, which should give this plenty of strength on top. It's not going to have a lot of weight on it. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take it inside and I'm going to put 2 or 3 coats of polyurethane on it. I'm not going to stain it. I'm not going to get fancy with it. It's going to be out in the garage holding up skis, and frankly, I've always liked the look of just plain white pine. I wiped the rack down with a wet cloth to raise the grain, and then just did a little light sanding. Mostly what I was trying to do is just to round off the sharp edges. I applied 3 coats of polyurethane. I knew this would put a nice gloss on the pine, but it was mostly just to protect it from the moisture. You know, sometimes you get pretty far along in a project and you'll think to yourself, I forgot to do something. And in this case, that's exactly what happened to me. I wanted to take off these sharp corners on the top of the shelf. And so what I did was I just came along here and I measured with a 45 and I drew a line here. And now what I'll do is I keep these 90-degree pieces of block that I put together out of scraps, and I just keep them around specifically for things like this, because I can just clamp this right onto the edge there, and that gives me a nice straight guide. And then what I'm going to do is to use a Japanese pull saw to cut this straight through. It'll line up against the edge of that 90-degree block there, and it'll cut nice and straight through this top shelf. Now let's talk about those hooks that I told you about earlier. You can see that I've pre-positioned them here where I think I'm going to put them in this board when it hangs up in the wall. So these hooks will sit in like this, and they will be for ski poles, helmets, whatever you might want to hang on them. There's never enough places to hang things in the garage, right? So what I'm going to do is I want to make sure that that hole is nice and straight when I put it in there. So I'm going to use this drill block by Miles Craft. And what it does is it's got those guides that you can line up over your hole, and then you put your drill in there and it keeps the drill nice and straight, so it's going to drill a straight hole for your hook. The other thing I've done, you see this tape that's around the drill bit here. What's going to happen is when I get down to that tape, you can see that I'm about 1/4 inch from the edge of the board down there, so I won't drill all the way through my board. And that should work great. Now, I'm not going to put those hooks in right now because through the magic of video, the next time you see this, it'll be about 300 miles away up in Wisconsin in my daughter's garage. And I don't want to put the hooks in yet because I'm not sure where I'm going to be positioning the screws to make sure that this gets screwed into the studs on the wall. So after I get up there, position the screws, then I'll go ahead and put these hooks in. Okay, we're back, and you have magically been teleported 300 miles north of where I live. Right now we're up in Madison, Wisconsin, and here's the ski rack that we made. It worked out really well. We've got room to accommodate 5 sets of skis. You can see that we've got the 3 for their family, and then we've got 2 extras. We put these metal hooks in between, like I said I was going to do, and that is really a good place to put the helmets, or even ski poles hang off of that. This shelf up on top really worked out well. You don't have to have that shelf if you don't need it, but it worked out really well. We've got their 3 sets of ski boots up there, a couple of pair of hiking boots up there, my granddaughter's roller blades, and with the extra hooks that I've got, like I said, you can never have enough hooks in a garage. We've got her rollerblade helmet, a dog coat, some jump rope. There's always things that you can find to hang in a garage. So this project worked out really well. I did anchor it to 4 different studs. You can see the black marks here. That's the black screws holding it to the 4 studs. This is very stable. Hey, I hope you like this project. I think it worked out really well. If you did, don't forget, hit me with that thumbs up. I always appreciate that. You might want to subscribe if you'd like to see some future projects like this. Thanks for watching.